The following is a production of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network.
Welcome back to the UFHL Now. I'm your host, Kyle Hall, and what an awesome week. The UFHL had their first All-Star Game. It was a great game. Unfortunately, a little more lopsided than probably most people were hoping for, but overall an unbelievable event, which we'll get into further on with Larry Fisher later on the show. We'll go over some of the highlights and some of the star players and a reveal of the MVP of the All-Star Game. But before we get into that, let's take you around the UFHL and check out what happened this last week. Taking a look at the standings overall, no real big changes this week to the standings. I know last week we did not go over them on the show because we had the All-Star Game special, but this is based off 2 weeks ago. We only had one change. The Ice Vikings jumped up to the number 8 spot, and the Gators dropped down to number 9. As you can see, the Titans, Royals, West Coast Express, Grizzlies, and Rock Republic make up that top 5 still, with the Titans now with a 121-point lead over the Royals. But look at some of those teams bunched up there at the 10, 9, 8, 7. You know, teams are getting a little closer. And you look at the 11 and 12, they're right on the Yetis' heels there with the Red Army there at 11 now, right on the Yetis' heels of breaking to that top 10. But it's going to be a really great race here towards the end of the year as we're closing out on playoff time. And let's take a look at some of those top performers from last week. Here are your top who's hot this week. Our first who's hot player is Svechnikov of Strong Island. Andrei Svechnikov, he had 23.04 fantasy points in the last 3 games, 4 goals and 2 assists and 6 points. A great week for the Carolina Hurricane forward. Strong Island, I think this is their first Who's Hot player. We have a couple of teams making their debut this week on the Who's Hot, which is awesome to see. I know a lot of NHL teams were off due to the quote-unquote Olympic break, and some teams were getting some makeup games in, so there was a lot of players who didn't suit up this week, but there was some really big performance, and Svechnikov was the top forward performer this last week in the UFHL. Our second who's hot this week is Blake Wheeler of the Warriors. Blake probably would have been on a Team USA team if the Olympics did have the NHL players there, but Blake and the Winnipeg Jets had a good couple games out of the break here. He had 22.77 fantasy points in his last 3 games. He had 2 goals and 4 assists this week for 6 points. He's a huge part of that team, both from a leadership standpoint and up the middle for them. So great week for the Warriors forward Blake Wheeler. Our third who's hot this week, Damon Steverson. Now, of course, I'm a Ranger fan, so people might say I'm a little biased, but hey, I can throw a Devils player in here every once in a while. 18.93 fantasy points for the defenseman in his last 3 games. Although he didn't score, he had 5 assists and 5 points. For the Brutes, and I believe this is the Brutes, also the Brutes' first time with a player in the Who's Hot list, so congrats to them, and congrats to Damon Steverson on a great week for the Devils defenseman. And then this next guy, I'm thrilled to have him on the list here. After getting a little made fun of for making the All-Star team from DUCKMANS Domination, Jeff Skinner. He had a really good All-Star game in the UFHL. Probably the only place you'll see Jeff Skinner in an All-Star game again, but he had a good All-Star game for the 4th line there, and he produced big time for Buffalo this week. In only 2 games, he had 20.5 fantasy points, 4 goals, and 2 assists. Great week for Jeff Skinner, and this is also DUCKMAN Domination's first Who's Hot player this year. So congrats to them, and congrats Jeff Skinner on a great week. And then this guy's been a recurring guest on this segment, Jacob Markstrom of the Gators, the Calgary goaltender. Again, only 2 games. He had 24.1 fantasy points. Sorry, the graphic got a little messed up there, but he had 24.1 fantasy points this week. In 3 games played, he was 3-0 with a 1.33 goals allowed and a 9.59 save percentage. Basically, the guy stopped any shot he faced this week. Humble week for Jacob Markstrom. I believe this is his 2nd week in a row and 3rd week overall on the Who's Hot list. So the Gators goaltender is heating back up, and he was on fire to start the year off. And who knows, he's going on one of these roles again. He can carry the Gators right back up the standings after a little fall this week down to 9. Now let's take a look at who's not hot this week. I think this has been everyone's favorite segment. I keep on getting some messages from people about this, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins of the Grizzlies. Unfortunately, Edmonton makes a coaching change Hopefully Nugent Hopkins gets a little bit of boost from that next week. This week, not so much. Only 2.88 fantasy points in the 3 games this last week. He had 0 points, 0 assists, 0 goals, and a -3 plus-minus rating. Not a good week for the Oilers forward. Our next player in the list, I mean, you can probably go over most of the Montreal Canadiens roster and say they're not hot, but Ben Sherratt, only 2.79 fantasy points in the last 3 games. Again, 0 offensive production, a -2 plus-minus rating, and plus, the Royals defenseman is now listed on the IR as of yesterday. So a bad week turned worse for the Royals defenseman. A guy who will most likely, I mean, he's on every trade list, it looks like. It looks like he might be moved to the trade deadline, which is probably best for the Royals. Hopefully he gets in a good situation for the playoff run for them. But tough week there for the Royals defenseman. And then another guy from the Montreal Canadiens. I'm sorry if you're a Canadiens fan. We're picking on you a little bit this week. From the Red Army, Arturi Lannon, 2.68 fantasy points in the 4 games that he played. Again, 0 offensive output, was a -1 plus-minus rating. Another guy who has come up in a lot of trade talks as well. I'm sure anyone who has a Canadiens player, you're probably hoping they get out of there this year because it's just been a train wreck. Mike Hoffman is another guy who could have been on this list this week, but didn't want to go too far and too hard on the Canadiens. And talk about going hard on a team. If you are part of the Godfathers organization, now is a time to fast forward for the next couple minutes because you're not going to want to see these next 2 players that pop up. Defenseman Miro Heiskanen, not a good week. 0.96 fantasy points in the last 3 games. Didn't even get a fantasy point in the last 3 games. 0 offensive output and a -4 plus-minus rating. Normally a very, very good defenseman. A very rough week for the Godfathers defenseman there. And then, unfortunately, when your defense doesn't play well, the goaltender probably doesn't play well either. And the Godfathers goaltender also is on this list. Carter Hart with a -0.4 fantasy points in the 2 games he played this week. 0-2 with a 4.16 goals allowed. An .857 save percentage is not what you want to see out of the Godfathers goaltender. And Philly continues to struggle, and Carter Hart continues to struggle this season. You got to think something's got to give pretty soon in Philadelphia. I know they made the coaching change, but you would hope they turn it around. And now their captain, Claude Giroux, is in trade talks. So, Philly's unfortunately looking at a bad season coming to an end even quicker than most Philly fans were hoping for. And Carter Hart, unfortunately, has not had a very good season, or he's had a little bit of a bounce back season from last year, but not the player they thought they were going to get out of him. Now let's take a look around the UFHL and see what else is going on. First, let's talk about some trade talks. So a couple trades went down this week. Strong Island receiving prospect Lucas Dossal from the Mystics for Lucas Elvis. Strong Island and Godfather's 2nd-round picks in the 2023 draft. Goaltender Braden Holtby, good pick up there for the Mystics, possibly a guy who can make an impact on the stretch if he gets moved or not as well. And then a boatload of SCO coin, almost 20,000 in SCO coin going the other way. So Strong Island playing a pretty penny there for a solid player, especially a pretty penny, a lot of coin there for a good prospect. And then our second trade this week, my cousin was on the move. I'm just kidding. Taylor Hall goes to Stingrays, and the Dominic Tonito. The Stingrays' 1st and 2nd-round picks, so basically the entire Stingrays draft gets sent back to the Kryptonites. And Helg Grands, who I'm not going to lie, I've not heard of. Maybe he's a good prospect, hopefully, for Kryptonites. But Taylor Hall, a solid pickup there for the Stingrays. He's probably not having the season that the Boston Bruins were hoping for, but a very solid player, and hopefully he turns it around for them down the stretch run here. And that was a team that Larry had on his watch list. Them and the Yetis, he was looking for them both to make a move as they continue to maneuver up and down the standings as they make their playoff pushes. So a good pickup there for the Stingrays, picking up a proven NHL scorer, former Hart Trophy Award winner, which obviously whenever a guy like that comes available, you kind of got to go all in on someone like that. And they did that with a lot of draft capital and some other players there. Now let's take a look at our Players of the Week, brought to you by Elite Prospects. Tony D'Angelo, the Godfathers. So the Godfathers, after they have 2 guys on the who's not hot list, Tony D'Angelo is the Defensive Player of the Week. So some redemption for them there. Jacob Markstrom, who we talked about before, is the Goaltender of the Week. And Andrei Svechnikov, who we talked about as well from Strong Island, is the Forward Player of the Week. Tony D'Angelo, I had him on the list, but I did want to give the Brutes a shout out because We have not heard from them yet, and I thought David Stevenson's had a very good week. I watched a lot of Devils games with the Rangers being off, so he was a guy who stood out to me a lot this week. But congrats, it's former New York Ranger and Carolina Hurricane Tony DeAngelo on the Players of the Week. And lastly, we have 5 brand new UFFS athletes, digital athletes to announce. Louis LeBlanc, Marco Waugh, Cole Meyer, Griffin Luce, and Travis St. Denis are all brand new. All 5 are brand new digital athletes this week. So each week continuing to put out more and more digital athletes. You might remember a lot of these guys. Cole Meyer right now is playing in the Jets organization. I believe he's there for the 3rd year. Griffin Luce is in the Blues organization. Travis St. Denis right now is over in Germany. I remember him playing from the Islanders for a couple years in the American Hockey League. Louis LeBlanc, a lot of people remember him as a first-round draft pick of the Montreal Canadiens a few years ago. And Marco Roy right now is playing overseas, and he was drafted by the Oilers. I remember him also playing in the Vancouver organization as well. So congratulations to those 5 guys, and welcome to the UFS family. Again, most of them are also owned in the UFHL or in the minor leagues as well. So awesome to see more people getting involved. And again, if you are an athlete and want to get involved on the digital side, please reach out to us. We have some awesome players building their own NFT that'll be coming out soon, and it's quite the roster they're building right now. So very exciting to see more and more athletes get added to this roster, and some names that almost everyone knows from when you look over the years and you look at a guy's name, you're like, oh yeah, I remember him. Louis LeBlanc, I remember him. I mean, 1st round pick of Canadians. I mean, he had a good American Hockey League career too. So some awesome new names added there. Now let's bring in Mr. Insider Larry Fisher. Larry, what an exciting week in the UFHL. Just wrapped up our first All-Star Game, and it was quite the event as well.
Yeah, the inaugural All-Star Game for the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. Great job by Tieran Karanduk, as well as Tony Karanduk, who had the idea that, hey, we should host an All-Star Game. The NHL does it. Why don't we do it? You know, we try to mirror the NHL in every way. We have the video game capabilities. Let's put it together. So Tieran took the reins, and him and the Jungle Boys set up all the rosters and stuff. And we got to watch our first ever UFHL All-Star Game. Unfortunately, the game itself, Kyle, wasn't a close contest. It was a blowout. So that hurt entertainment value somewhat. But overall, the product was a lot of fun to see what it would look like in an esports realm with the stars of the UFHL. And as you know, the Legends Conference defeated the Allen Conference 18-9. They were leading by 5 goals at both the period breaks, 5-0 and 11-6. And then scored, I think, 5 unanswered goals to start the 3rd period, ran it up to 16-6, a 10-goal spread at one point. So from that perspective, it was a bit of a bummer that it wasn't a close game. And also, I believe we both predicted the Legends Conference would come out, or sorry, the Allen Conference would come out on top. And you were right, though. You had one prediction, right?
I had the over. I told you going in, I said, I know the over is going to hit. That's what I have. You pushed me towards the Allen Conference. You had such good thoughts, and they got absolutely smoked. It was a 5-0 in the first period. I'm sitting there watching the game wondering, what's going on? I have Mr. Insider telling me the inside scoop, and they're getting the doors blown off them.
Yeah, unfortunately, your goaltender, Shesterkin, really let down the Allen Conference in the first period. He got shelled. He got the hook after the 5th goal in the first period. They made a goaltending change. So quite the exciting game, though, overall. And there were some highlights for the Rangers, too. Obviously, Zibanejad scored twice. Jacob Trouba, who we'll talk about that later, but he had an impact, scored a nice goal, jumping into the rush. So it was cool all around. Chris Kreider didn't make as much of an impact as you might expect, being the NHL's leading goal scorer, but he took a hard hit from Mackenzie Weegar in the first period, and I think he was shook up for most of the game. But when the dust settled, 18-9 in favor of the Legends Conference, led by Alex Ovechkin, and obviously guys like Jonathan Huberdeau were on that roster. But in the end, Kyle, the All-Star Game MVP was Timo Meier of Rock Republic. 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. So Timo Meier walks away with the All-Star Game MVP. And when we were watching the game, Kyle, you actually mentioned his first goal, the 5-0 goal that chased Chesterton. You said, wow, what a play. And And that was sort of one point
Mm-hmm.
where Myers stood out, but the rest of the game, he wasn't a huge standout. You know, we were thinking Markstrom, Huberdeau, some of the other MVP, Drake Batherson even as MVP candidate. And then the end of the game comes and the 3 stars come and holy, Timo Meyer sitting there with 6 points and the first star. And just talk about your thoughts on Meyer's game and watching that play out.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think that first goal might have been the goal of the game. I mean, that was a sick goal. But I think I thought I had a couple other possible MVP candidates. I don't know if he was on top of my list, but like you said, at the end of the game, you kind of look over the stat sheet and it's like, oh wow, okay. He had 4 assists, which you really didn't realize in gameplay. But I probably would have had Jacob Markstrom as my MVP. You don't see a guy have 69 saves too often in a game, although he did let up 9 goals, so that might have been gone against him in the voting, but I think he would have been my MVP. But a lot of guys who I didn't think were going to have big games, like Drake Batherson had a great game. What's his name from Buffalo, from Duckman,
Jeff Skinner,
Jeff Skinner. I think he had a couple goals too. So a couple of guys that you didn't expect to have more of a fourth line role in this game kind of stepped up and scored some big time goals.
Yeah, Skinner with a great assist to Batherson to open the scoring and really get the Legends Conference going en route to their victory. And yeah, it was funny watching Jeff Skinner dangle out there. But like I said, he's been having a good year in Buffalo too, and he didn't look out of place in the UFHL All-Star Game. But when it came to the 3 stars, obviously Timo Meyer, that 6-point performance, 2 goals, 4 assists, he got the first star. Second star, Rupe Hintz, a 5-point performance. 2 goals, 3 assists. And the third star, the only hat trick of the UFHL All-Star Game, Jonathan Huberdeau, 3 goals, 1 assist. Huberdeau also had the game-winning goal. He had the goal that made it 10-3 at the end of the second period. So his one of his 3 goals stood up as the game winner. But all 3 stars from the Legends Conference and really a strong performance by those 3. But like you said, Kyle, I think when you look at the top goaltender being Jacob Markstrom and the decision by Donnie Talk, who, again, one thing we did cool was to make it more interactive. We did a vote. The franchises voted on who they wanted to be the honorary coaches. And Donnie Talk was the winning coach representing Kamikaze. And he made that call based on fantasy points, based on that Legends Conference roster going in, the lineup. It was going to be Jack Campbell was going to be the starter for the Legends Conference. He had more fantasy points to the All-Star break for that Legends Conference and the Howe division, the OR division for Jack Campbell. And Donnie Talk made the game time decision to switch goaltenders, go with Jacob Markstrom and let him go the distance. And you mentioned it, Kyle, but Markstrom was definitely the difference early on, pitching that shutout through the first period. Well, unfortunately, Igor Shesterkin allowed 5 goals at the other end for the Allen Conference and got yanked with 3 minutes left in the first period. So Jacob Markstrom definitely was one of the big difference makers. And I think, in all honesty, Kyle, and again, I speak from the goalie union, former goaltender myself, I always notice the goalies more. And you don't think a goalie's going to ever get an All-Star Game MVP honor. But even when he surrendered, I said at one point, Markstrom has surrendered a touchdown and he's still my MVP at this point. And again, not a Flames fan by any stretch of the imagination either. So Markstrom was a real standout for me. I would have gave him my MVP again because he made those monster saves in the first period. He shut down guys like Draisaitl and McDavid and Austin Matthews when he had a bit of momentum going early. And then again, couldn't get a save at the other end in that first period. So congrats to Donnie Talk on the decision to start Markstrom and to stick with him for the distance, because normally in an All-Star game, you switch goaltenders halfway through. He went the distance with Markstrom, maybe didn't trust Jack Campbell, knowing that Austin Matthews is one of the shooters on the other side.
Yeah, I was surprised there's no change there. Maybe something about Campbell rubs him the wrong way, but we were surprised even pregame when the lineups came out that Campbell wasn't in there. And like you said, it turned out to be a great decision by him. But shutting down that first line, I mean, McDavid, Draisaitl, and Matthews, they really couldn't get anything going in the game. I think McDavid ended up with 3 points, which in an All-Star game, you would expect him to probably have 6 or so. So, I mean, great job shutting down that top line. I know Jacob Trouba, my guy, was hammer. I think he had a huge hit on Matthews in the center ice area. He was throwing the body around, but a great job shutting down that dynamic first line.
And that's a great point, that the physical play right off the start. Tony Krandick, one of the UFS founders, said, holy, this is a rough All-Star game. 2 fights in the UFHL All-Star game. And how many big hits. We saw Kreider get leveled by Mackenzie Weegar. And then probably the biggest hit of the game, the TSN turning point, if you will, in the second period when the Allen Conference was starting to mount a bit of a comeback back within 5 goals anyway. Chris Letang hammered Leon Draisaitl into the boards, and Draisaitl didn't return for the third period. And that was sort of the end of the McDavid night as well, because Draisaitl did score 2 goals before leaving, but once he was hurt, sort of in that latter part of the second period, that's when the wheels really fell off. And like we said, 5 unanswered goals to start the third period to run it up to a double-digit spread at 16-6, and coasted the rest of the way to finish up 18-9.
Yeah, Mika got hot there. I think it was the second period. He scored a couple goals, and they cut it. So I think it was a 5-goal deficit at one point in the second, and then, like you said, they came out in the third period and just they lit it up. There was no comeback. The comeback fell short. Whatever was said in the locker room in the second period was great. Third period, not so much.
And you had one of the quotes of the night too, Kyle. You said an 8-goal lead in the third. Not even the Leafs could blow that. I thought that was a good one. And actually, Ray Ferraro on the commentary too, right? He called out Austin Matthews halfway through the third period. Just basically said he's not generating anything tonight. And we had some fun at Matthews' expense. He was sort of the whipping boy on the night because he didn't do much in the UFHL All-Star game. He had one nice assist on a Draisaitl goal. But you thought Matthews, McDavid, and Draisaitl, that line was going to dominate, and Matthews was struggling. He was pretty sluggish throughout, so we said maybe he had missed curfew and had a late night out the night before. EA Sports had the game staged in Saskatoon, so we were making fun of that. And actually, the owner of Blades of Steel, Mike Bender, is from that Saskatoon area, so it was funny to see Mike chime in and say Saskatoon can do that to a guy, speaking from experience. So I thought we had a lot of fun at Austin Matthews' expense. And while that UFHL All-Star game was airing on Monday night, because we had to delay it until Monday, the real Austin Matthews in the real world was outscoring 2 goals for the Toronto Maple Leafs as they pulled off a come-from-behind overtime victory over Carolina. So we were ragging on him in the All-Star game, but he was busy lighting it up for Toronto in the real world. And I think he'll be a big factor for Blades of Steel down the stretch.
Yeah, I think Blades of Steel would rather see him light up for Toronto than the All-Star game anyway, but yeah, it was fun poking fun at them. I know. I was hoping some Toronto fans would kind of go back on that comment, because you gotta love Leaf fans. I mean, they always they love the 2-goal and 3-goal lead blowing comments. I know they always enjoy that. But all in all, and also there was some cash and some score coin won on Monday night as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kyle. All the players on the winning roster, the Legends Conference, as well as Donnie Talk, the winning coach, and the 2 goaltenders that were snubbed. Because remember, the Legends Conference, as good as Jacob Markstrom played, and Jack Campbell was on the roster, they also technically would have had Andrei Vasilevsky and UC Saros, the number 1 and number 3 goaltenders in UFHL fantasy points, got snubbed. But Vasilevsky and Saros are also getting a payout from the UFHL All-Star game as a result of that snub. So all 23 or 22 players and the one coach, Donnie Talk, are all getting $5 worth of score coin, which I believe the Royals had 3 All-Stars. They were the leader of all franchises. They had 3 players on the All-Star team, so they get $15 worth of score coin at the end of the season when all the payouts are distributed following the Klein Cup playoffs. But that'll amount to 3 free trades for the Royals next season. And obviously anybody that was all 32 franchises were represented. So all 16 franchises from that Legends Conference earned at least 1 free trade. Several earned 2. And then obviously the Royals led the way with 3 players on the All-Star roster. So that was great. And you mentioned another funny storyline, or maybe the controversy of the All-Star game, Kyle, was on that Legends Conference roster. And Jacob Trouba somehow got number 8 over Alex Ovechkin for the Legends Conference. I don't know. Ovechkin was stuck wearing number 4 for this UFHL All-Star game. Yeah, I think you called it, right? You said the Great 4 when he scored a goal
out there.
Yeah, in the first period. And not sure who to blame there. Whether that's Kyle, yourself, you're the Rangers fan. Maybe you put the bug in that Trouba deserves the rights to number 8, or Donnie, right? Donnie's the coach of the team. He's also the coach and owner and GM of Kamikaze. Well, guess what team Jacob Trouba plays for in the UFHL? he's a kamikaze player. So maybe Donnie Talk, when he was handing out those jerseys, just, oh yeah, here's my guy Trouba. I'll give him number 8. Oh, what's left here at the end? Oh, it looks like number 4 for Ovechkin here as the last jersey to go around. So we got a kick out of that. But it's good to see both of them score. And Trouba actually looked like Ovechkin on his goal, jumping up on a 2-on-1 and getting off that quick shot.
Yeah, when I saw Ovechkin out there, number 4 jersey, I was laughing. And it took me a minute to kind of figure out, I'm like, oh, Makar must have number 8. And I'm looking at there, he's wearing number 2. And sure enough, here comes Trouba trucking someone. I'm like, well, there's number 8 there. But I think the whole funny part is that Ovechkin's the reason why there's now double numbers in the actual NHL game, All-Star game, because he basically told the NHL, if I'm not number 8, I'm not coming. And sure enough, now guys can wear duplicate numbers on the ice. So pretty funny to see him get snubbed of the number in the UFHL All-Star game.
Yeah, what a crazy world how that played out in the UFHL. And that's actually a really cool story that's the reason they allow the double numbers in the NHL. I actually didn't know that. I knew they allowed them because I thought it was just fan familiarity that they recognized their player by their number. But the fact that Ovechkin was behind that movement and then we snub him and take his number away in the UFHL All-Star game, what goes around comes around, I guess, in that sense. But yeah, just an all-around fun experience for the UFHL All-Star Game, and certainly going to be an annual tradition going forward. And again, we couldn't have done it without Tieran Krandic and the Jungle Boys actually putting together the gameplay. And they were quick on their feet because originally we were going to mirror the NHL All-Star Game with division rosters and 6 forwards, 3 defenders, 2 goaltenders per division. That's how we announced the All-Stars. And then we realized, you can't do that in the video game. You need full rosters, and you need you can't play 3-on-3. You got to play 5-on-5. So they set it all up really well. It ended up being the Saskatoon Legends Conference against the Kelowna Allen Conference. So that was kind of funny too. But just all in all, to see our uniforms that Andrea Krandic designed, did a great job on the uniforms. They were represented in the game. They did the custom uniforms. The Allen Conference was wearing the Gretzky Division uniforms, and the Legends Conference ended up wearing the Howe Division uniform. So top to bottom, just a great production. Like I said, wish it would have been a closer game, more intense. Well, it was certainly physically intense. We didn't expect it to be that physical, but and again, that's probably credit to Donnie Talk. Kamikaze is the Broad Street bullies of the UFHL. They fight their way to the top, like you said last week's show, Kyle. So certainly the whole team, the whole Legends Conference played like they were on the roster for Kamikaze there with the physical approach. But overall, it would have been nice to have a little bit more of a competitive contest as far as the score goes. But all the All-Stars represented their franchises very well. And I think that the owners got a kick out of watching their players out there scoring and having success in the UFHL All-Star Game.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I think next year's All-Star Game, I think the league can just build off this year and make it even bigger and better next year. And I tell you what, it was an exciting game, even though it was a little out of reach there towards the end, and the beginning was a little rough, but it was so exciting to watch. And not too often you get some, dropping the gloves in the All-Star game. I think Landeskog had a Gordie Howe hat trick in the game too, so I don't think that's ever happened in an All-Star game either.
Yeah, no doubt. How about that? Yeah, Landeskog with the Gordie Howe hat trick. That was great. So many highlights, right? You go through the highlights, and even to watch the game back for the owners that didn't get to watch it live. And again, we were kind of, I say live tweeting, but we were live commenting on Telegram throughout the game. So some owners may not have taken the time yet to watch the game. I think it's worth going and checking out. Again, I thought it was a quality product overall, and the entertainment value is there, even though the score wasn't that close, because no shortage of highlights, big hits, fights, massive saves, anything you want in an All-Star game. It was there, including that physical element that you don't get in the NHL All-Star game, highlighted by that, like I said, Gordie Howe hat trick, which that's probably a first for an All-Star game, I'm sure.
Yeah, so if you did miss the game, it's on UFS Network on the YouTube channel, and we'll try to link it in our in the description too for this episode as well. So make it a little bit easier for people to try to find it. Or frankly, if you found this episode on YouTube, just go to the next video down and you'll be able to find the All-Star game most likely. But Larry, anything else before we let you go?
No, I thought there'd be more trades, Kyle, leading up to that All-Star game, because you had the sort of the NHL ended on Wednesday, and then you had Thursday and Friday off before the All-Star game. I really expected we were going to see some more blockbusters because there were a lot in the week before. I thought we would have seen more leading up to the All-Star game throughout All-Star weekend. It was surprisingly quiet in the UFHL. There was the one big trade. Strong Island acquired Lucas Dostal, a top goaltending prospect from the Anaheim Ducks. Paid a pretty penny for him, both in score coin and assets. Braden Holtby, Lucas Alvinus, a couple second-round picks, and a big pile of score coin going the other way. But Strong Island, as we mentioned last week, getting stronger and stronger for the future, really focusing on targeting specific prospects. Lucas Dostal becomes a goaltender in their system. They already had Kevin Lankinen, who, depending what happens with Marc-Andre Fleury, is still looking like the number one going forward for Chicago. He's been sidelined lately, but they have Kevin Lankinen. They also have Justice and Noonan, so they have a Finnish tandem with Colorado's top goaltending prospect, and now they have Anaheim's top goaltending prospect in Lucas Dostal. Although, with the way John Gibson's playing this season, there might be, and the fact Anaheim's back in the playoff race and trending up again, there might be a bit of a roadblock there for Dostal, but he certainly looks like the future in Anaheim as well. So there was that trade, but very surprising to me that there wasn't more trades. Again, I still say keep an eye on the Stingrays, keep an eye on the Yetis. It'll be interesting to see in the coming days and weeks leading up to that March 21st trade deadline in both the NHL and the UFHL to see the kind of player movement in the blockbusters that could shake out in the UFHL.
Yeah, I think maybe you see some movement in the next week when the games start getting back on. Maybe guys, some of these GMs might have taken the week off to kind of relax and reset with their team. Maybe try to figure out what direction they're going in. And who knows, behind closed doors, there could be a ton of conversations happening that just haven't come through. But I expect probably, I would think next week, I think we're going to see another big trade. You're starting to hear a little more rumblings on the trade block as well in the Telegram group as well. People putting more names out there. So hopefully we'll have bigger news to share next week on the trade front. But all in all, a great All-Star game, and really excited for the second half of the season. It's going to be a mad dash here to the championship.
Absolutely, Kyle. And thanks again for all the support of the UFHL All-Star Game. It's great to have you watching along and commentating as well. That was great. And then, again, the trade front, the fireworks are coming. And I keep thinking the Stingrays are one that are going to, because they see Strong Island using that score coin to bring in future players. I think the Stingrays would like to use some score coin to challenge for that top five, maybe even take a run at the Founders Trophy as regular season champions and position themselves well going into that playoff draft for the Klein Cup playoffs. So it's going to be, like I said, a furious second half. It's going to be great action in the standings as well as on the trade front, and another very successful season to date in the third season for the UFHL, the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League.
Larry, thanks so much. We'll catch up with you next week.
Sounds good, Kyle.
Thank you so much to Mr. Insider Larry Fisher for all his great input. Larry's on vacation, so we actually had to film that as he was going on vacation. So can't thank Larry enough. He is so dedicated to this league and this show. I mean, that guy just knows everything about this league, and he is such an awesome asset to everyone. So again, I can't thank Larry enough, and all the hard work everyone did in the All-Star game this last week. That was awesome. It was a great event. I can't wait for next year. I'm sure it'll be bigger and better than ever. And I thought it was really cool how everyone's in Telegram going back and forth in the game and talking about. So a very cool experience this last week with the All-Star game. And again, thanks to Larry. It's a shout out to Larry for all his hard work that he does. The guy is awesome. But before we sign off this week, let's take a look at this week's Twitter poll. I wanted to switch it up and go over who do you think is going to have the most hits this year in the NHL? We have Gudis there, the Ice Vikings, Clutterbuck of the Eliminators, Reeves of the Snipers, and Deloria of the Mystics. Gudis got a little bit of a lead there at 199, but I think any of these guys can rack up 9 to 10 hits in a night. So this is just the top four right now. There's a lot of guys right on the edge there. So if you don't think it's going to be one of those guys, go on the UFHL Twitter, which we'll post this on, and just comment on who you think is going to be the hits leader this year. Right now, Ryan Reeves obviously is a guy I love, but Deloria, every time that guy has highlights, he's beating someone up at center ice. Cal Clutterbuck, I've hated him for years on the Islanders, and then that guy hits anything that moves for, I feel like 10 years now. That guy's been just, let us know who you think's going to finish with the most hits this year. I think it's going to be a fun poll. A little change up from all the scorers always getting all the glory, or goaltenders or Norris Trophy winners. Let's talk about the dirty players. Let's talk about the guys who go into the corners hard and give them some shine. So let us know what you think. And that does it for this week on the UFHL Now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.